When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came up and touched the barrier, and the barriers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." It is Thursday, the 29th day of September 2022. My name is Clive Welsh, inviting you to join me for the reading of our devotional thought for today. And I'm reading from the devotional book entitled Truth for Life by Pastor Alistair Begg. Today's devotional thought is entitled Our Compassionate Shepherd. And the verses, Luke chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, and it reads, "When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, 'Do not weep.' Then he came up and touched the barrier, and the barriers stood still. And he said, 'Young man, I say to you, arise.'" That's Luke's Gospel, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Alistair Begg writes in today's devotional thought, "The coming of the kingdom of God was not heralded by spectacular and dramatic victories over the powers and the authorities of the world, but through something much more transformative, the great compassion of its King." Throughout their accounts of Jesus, the Gospel writers present us with encounters after encounters demonstrated Christ's unparalleled compassion. In these instances, Christ's power is revealed as his compassion is extended. In chapter 7 of his Gospel, for instance, Luke highlights Jesus' compassionate response to a sorrowful widow, a response which clears any doubt about his greatness. The woman in this part of Luke's narrative was in true need. Her husband had already gone, and now her son had just died. In an ancient Middle Eastern society, this meant that she had no means of protection or provision. She faced a life of sadness, loneliness, and precariousness, and then the end of the family line. But then Jesus entered into the extremity of this woman's life, and when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said to her, "Do not weep." All it took to arouse the compassion of our tender shepherd was seeing this grieving woman. Literally, the word compassion means his bowels moved. Our eloquent would be his stomach churned. When Jesus, through whom and for whom all things were created, sees sadness and grief in this broken world, he feels it. Here is a king who cares deeply. Even more beautiful is that Jesus had the power to meet this widow's need, and so he chose to do something only he can do, to bring the dead back to life. He didn't just restore a deceased son alive again to a mourning mother and thereby meet her need and obliterated her grief, though. More importantly, Jesus revealed himself to the crowd and to us in all of his power, kindness, and authority, even authority over death. Scenes such as this shows us that Jesus doesn't simply comment on or cry over sickness and death, those great enemies of mankind. He overcomes them. He hears the cries of the sorrowful, and he comforts them, not only in an earthly, temporal sense, but also in a final, perfect, and eternal way, by offering himself as the means of salvation to all who believe. Your King is not merely infinitely powerful, he is infinitely compassionate, and the combination of those two qualities in him is sufficient to bring you through every sadness and grief in this world, until you stand in his presence and he wipes every tear from your eye. Oh, what a happy day that will be. And that is reality, folks. There will come a day when we stand in his presence and he will wipe away the tears. So if you're going through a difficult time, know this. You have a very compassionate shepherd that feels the things that you feel, and he allowed himself to be tempted as we are tempted, so that he can be that faithful high priest. What a great shepherd we have. What a great high priest we have. And our response, let's worship him and give him our love, give him our lives, and serve him this very day. And may his Spirit make it so. And that's the reading of our devotional thought for this 29th day of September 2022. And for those of you reading through the scriptures in a year, Ezekiel chapter 22 and 23, as well as the Gospel of John chapter 13, the first 20 verses. That's 1 through 20. Clive Welsh here, and may the Lord richly bless you.